Hi, my name's Maddie Makoff. I did my presentation on the child's influence on British Romantic poetry. And this is my title page or title slide. So I chose two pictures. I chose a white rose because it represents and symbolizes um, innocence and children. And then I also did a little poem in the bottom left corner, and it's by William Wordsworth, and it's one of the authors that was influenced by the child during this era. So the Romantic era was actually to rebel against order. They began to value different things than they used to value. People began to put value into emotion, intuition, and imagination. The child played a really large role in British Romantic poetry because it sparked a debate in society where people began to reconsider what it meant to be a child, because children were seen as uncorrupted by society. So that's a little bit on the Romantic era. And then some of the poets who were influenced by the child, and we can actually find evidence in their writing and with their ideas, is William Blake with Songs of Innocence and Experience, and William Wordsworth with Imitations on Immortality. William Blake uses children in adult literature because the child was seen as closer to nature. William Blake actually intended the songs to be better interpreted by children. This is because he believed that they didn't have a clouded perception that derived from the compromises required by an adult life, and that's from the Songs of Experience that he wrote. In his writing, he explains when the voices of children are heard on the green and laughing is heard on the hill, my heart is at rest within my breast and everything else is still. And that's William Blake with Songs of Innocence and Experience. So we can easily recognize that the child is used in this song, but not only is it based on a child, but it's made for them to understand better than an adult would. However, this actually does have a deeper meaning. And the deeper meaning is for kids to be safe because someone else is always worrying about them. So this is just one example of a poem that he wrote that was influenced by the child. Then we can further see evidence of another author being influenced by the child in his writings. William Wordsworth. He explains, "Nothing was more difficult for me in childhood than to admit the notion of death as a state applicable to my own being." So in the writer's ode, Intimations of Immortality from Recollections of Early Childhood, the essence of mortality is not conversed in moral terms, but actually spiritual. This embodies the view of kids being close to nature, and it's easily shown in this piece of writing. The author was sculpted by a child's perception that comes intuitively. He also has the idea that adults can only perceive ideas through contemplation and mature thought processes, and that's why the child's view is more pure. So these are just two examples of how the child influenced British Romantic poetry. So the people that influenced the role of the child in British Romantic poetry, who I really want to talk about, is John Locke's influence, because he actually had a really big influence on this era and kind of the ideas that people took from it. John Locke proclaims that the mind does not possess innate ideas, but instead resembles a blank sheet of paper on which impressions and ideas deriving from them are inscribed. And that was written in an essay concerning human understanding. So when he says that, John Locke is actually trying to say that when we're born, we don't really know anything, and as we grow up, the places and the people and experiences that we have surrounding us is what affects our brains and our thoughts. In other words, Locke's theory on how children develop is, as soon as the child begins the artificial rather than natural process of being trained in the hands of man, the child degenerates from a state of original goodness. The writer believed that civilization is what corrupted the child. Now we're able to make the connection of how Locke said that the child was closest to nature, and then reflect it back onto William Blake and William Wordsworth writings when they were talking about how the child was close to nature as well. So, in conclusion, people enter this world pure and innocent, but it's the outside world and influence and input from those surrounding that create good and bad, that form who we are and how we behave and think. And based off the evidence in this presentation, one is able to make the connection that the child had a great influence on British Romantic poetry. Thank you.